What's going on, guys? It's NYPrepper here, and in this video I'm going to show you how to start a fire. This is part 3 of the how to start a fire in the wilderness series. So in this video I'm going to actually show you guys how to start a fire. If you're in a situation where you're getting cold, hypothermic, or the sun is going down and you're in the woods and you may have to spend the night in the woods. Let's say you're hunting and it's getting late and you're getting lost potentially, and you may have to build a fire to stay warm. Or if you're bugging out and you're in a SHTF scenario and you need to start a fire, I'm going to show you guys how to start a fire, and I'm going to show you some tips and tricks. All right, if you haven't seen the first 2 videos in the series, check out my Firecraft playlist, and I'll attach a link to that up above at the top of the video. And I recommend you guys watch the first 2 parts of the series, because I go into the basics of how to start a fire, the kind of the classroom principles. And here today we're going to do a field exercise and show you guys actually in the field how to start a fire. All right, so go back and watch the first 2 videos before you watch this, and then come back and watch this after. All right, so stick around and I'll show you guys some tips and some tricks, and we'll go through how to start a fire. So stay tuned. All right, guys, so the sun is starting to go down, and temperatures are cold right now. As you can see, there's snow on the ground, and let's say you're in a situation where you're lost or you're bugging out and you have to start a fire, okay? And so what do? All right, well, first of all, before you think about starting a fire, you have to make sure you prepare for situations like this ahead of time. So if you have proper clothing and you have certain gear, you may not necessarily need to start a fire, okay? If you have adequate clothing, if you have water purification tablets, and if you have snacks, you don't really need to start a fire unless you're really getting cold, or you're in a situation where you have to boil water or cook some food that you scavenged. But if you prepare ahead of time, you won't have to build a fire, and you should never rely on a fire to keep you warm, because starting a fire is never a guarantee, okay? So, you always have to think about, and I'm going to reiterate what I reiterated in the first 2 videos. Before you start a fire, you have to ask yourself, do I really need to start this fire, or am I just doing it because I saw somebody on a survival show do it, and that's what you have to do. You don't always have to start a fire. If you're warm, you have food, you have water, you don't necessarily need to start a fire, okay? So, because starting a fire, like I said before, it takes up energy. You're going to burn calories doing it. You have to gather wood. You have to start the fire. You have to feed the fire. You have to constantly maintain it. All right, you're going to burn a lot of calories doing that, okay? And if you're in a survival situation or you're bugging out and you're in the middle of nowhere, you're not just going to be able to, replenish those calories that easily. So you have to think about that, okay? Because there's always a cost to everything, all right? Just like in life. So you have to do a cost-benefit analysis, all right? Is it worth it for me to burn potentially a couple of 100 calories to get this fire going? Do I really need to do that, or is there an alternative? Can I find a cave? Can I find a depression for shelter to keep me warm? Can I build a improvised shelter so I don't have to do that, and I can conserve my calories and conserve my energy, okay? Another thing too is time, okay? It takes time to start a fire, all right? It can take you up to 1 to 2 hours just to get a fire going. By the time you gather the wood, by the time you get the tinder, gather the kindling, the fuel wood, and then you actually light the tinder, then you have to maintain it, and it's a long process, all right? You have to make sure that you allow yourself at least 2 hours to get the fire going. So like right now, the sun is starting to go down over there. Now is the latest that I would ever want to start a fire if I was in a survival situation, because in about 2 hours it's going to start getting dark. All right, so, and you don't want to be in a rush. because then you can hurt yourself, you can cut your hand, you can make mistakes, and that's how accidents happen. So allow yourself enough time to get the fire going, but remember, it's going to take up a lot of calories, a lot of time. And, you know, that 2-3 hours that it takes you to build that fire, you could potentially cover five miles or more, you know, if you're bugging out, or if you're in a survival situation and you're trying to get back to civilization. You know, the time that it takes you to gather the wood, build the fire, that's going to take 2 to 3 hours. In those 2 to 3 hours, you could cover many miles, and you could already be in civilization by then. Or if you're bugging out and it's SHTF, you could be that much closer to your bug out location, or whatever place you're going to. All right. Another thing too is noise. All right. If you're building a fire, you're going to make a lot of noise. All right. Because you're going to be breaking branches, and those loud popping sounds, like right now in the woods here, we're in the middle of nowhere. All right. Usually you don't hear cracking sticks unless something is breaking them. All right. Whether it's an animal or a human being, something breaks those sticks. And if it's SHTF and there's hostile people around, they're going to hear you breaking sticks. You know, they may smell the smoke from your fire. They may also see the flame. Okay, so you have to consider all these things: time, energy, calories, and, you know, stealthiness. All right, so you have to do a cost-benefit analysis and see if it's worth it for you to build the fire, if it's not going to, you know, give away your position, if it's not going to burn too many calories, and it's not going to kill too much time. All right, it has to really be worth it for you, you know. So, you know, you're going to have to figure that out for yourself when you're in that situation. I can't tell you, you know, everybody's different. Me personally, you know, I tend to run hot. I don't really get that cold as long as I have decent clothing on, you know, and I'm moving around. I can be out in some really frigid conditions. And I always come prepared with snacks and water and purification tablets. So for me, a fire is an absolute last resort, and it should always be a last resort. All right. If you're in a situation where you have to build a fire to boil water or to stay warm, that means you didn't prepare, and that's an absolute last resort. You know, you don't want to rely on a fire to keep you warm, to feed you, because starting a fire is not easy. And, you know, even people that have been doing it for their whole life, survival instructors, there's times where they can't even start a fire. All right. So stick around. I'm going to show you guys how to start the fire. All right, guys. So the first thing you'll notice is the ground is wet here. Okay. And another thing you'll notice too is the woods are open over here. So we're going to have to do something about this. We're going to have to think about where we're going to start the fire. The first thing you want to do is you want to look for an area that's going to have some natural fire reflecting capabilities. So like a big stone or a blown down tree that's going to reflect the heat back to you. Okay. If you can't find that, you know, you should try to find an area where you have some overhead cover. All right. So this way your fire doesn't get rained on or snowed on, and it doesn't get put out, and also to shelter you from the snow and from the precipitation. So I found that what I consider to be an ideal area. So on the right side, on this side here, this is not a good area to start a fire. All right, it's too exposed. It's out in the open. If I had a fire going over here and somebody was walking through, if it's SHTF, they would see my fire from a long distance. The smoke would travel. You know, the wind would blow the smoke and travel through these open hardwoods here. So this is not a good spot. All right. Also, there's no overhead cover here. You see the trees are bare. So if it starts to rain and there's snow, it's going to potentially put out my fire, and it's going to make it a lot harder to get the fire going. All right. If it's snowing and you're trying to get your fire going and you're getting snow on your tinder or on your fuel wood, it's going to be a lot harder. All right. We're lucky today that there's no rain and there's no snow. You know, it's not a blizzard or anything like that. But if it was a rainstorm or a blizzard, it would be very difficult to get a fire going in those open woods there. All right. Because you're going to have precipitation coming down on the area that you're working, and your wood is going to get wet. Your tinder is going to get wet. All right. So you want to use what Mother Nature gives you to your advantage. All right. And so looking around here, we could see that to our left, my left over here, you could see these dense conifers, okay? So this is a much better location to start a fire because you have natural overhead cover there, all right? If it starts to rain or snow, it's not going to get your area wet, and it's going to also protect you from the rain and the snow. All right, so that's the best location to be. You always want to look for a conifer stand if you can. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to head over there, and we're going to find a good location to build our fire, and then I'm going to show you guys how to find some wood that's dry, because as you see here, the ground is wet. We had some snow here last night, and the snow melted because it was above freezing today, but it's going to get down below freezing tonight, so everything is going to freeze. But, you know, the ground is wet here, so it's anything that's on the ground is going to be hard to burn because it's going to be moist and it's going to be wet. All right, so I'm going to show you guys some tips and some tricks on how to get a fire going in a situation like this, so stand by. All right guys, so this is the spot that I'm going to build my fire. You can see I got overhead cover here. All right, I got some evergreens on top that are going to shield my fire from any precipitation. All right, it's also going to break the wind, all right, because we got this coniferous forest here. There's not going to be much wind inside of a coniferous forest because the boughs on the conifer trees break the wind. All right, so you can see how thick this forest is here, okay? And that's going to break the wind, all right? The sun is going down, so we got to work quick. And we also got a water source here too, so if we need to fill up our canteens and boil some water, or if we need to extinguish the fire, we got a water source right here. So now if this was SHTF, I would try to find something to break up my fire. Now what you see, if you look around, I got these blowdowns here all around me, okay? And I'm kind of in like a depression area, and what that's going to do is that's going to shield the flame. So if somebody's walking by, let's say down in that area, all right, I got these blowdowns that are going to break up the flame. And you know, ideally you'd want to have like a stone, or you know, maybe a deeper depression where the flame is not going to be visible. But I'm kind of crunched for time here today, so I don't have time to find that for you guys, so I'm doing the best that I can. But so stay tuned and we're going to get this fire going. All right guys, so let's say the ground is wet and you can't find good tinder. Now there's good tinder everywhere, okay? You know, I can't tell you what tinder sources are good for your area, but here in the Northeast, in my part of the country, the best tinder in the woods is going to be birch bark and dry wood shavings. All right, that's going to be your best bet. All right, if you didn't bring any tinder, if you watch part 2 of my series, I talk about bringing man-made tinder. All right, man-made tinder will save you your butt, okay? If you have to rely on natural tinder, it's going to be hard, all right? Even if you're skilled, it doesn't matter, all right? So, but let's say in this scenario, we didn't bring any natural tinder, and we have to get the fire going, all right? Everything on the ground is going to be wet, so you don't want to touch anything on the ground. But what you want to look for is you want to look for a blowdown, all right? You see over here, we got this big blowdown, all right? You see all these branches here. These branches are suspended off the ground, all right? And these branches are going to be super dry, and these are going to be your kindling, all right? The best way to tell if a branch is dry enough to burn for kindling and for tinder is to just simply break it, okay? And if it breaks and it makes a popping sound, I'll let you guys listen. All right, you hear how it just breaks nicely? Okay, nice popping. All right, this is bone dry wood, all right? And the thing is that the bark on the outside is gonna keep the inside of the wood dry. So what you can do is you can break a stick off here. You find a dry stick, a good sized stick like this, about the size of your finger. You're going to break a piece off about 6 to 12 inches long, and you're going to scrape off shavings from it, and the shavings are going to be your tinder, all right? And what happens is the bark is going to keep the inside of the stick dry, okay? Even if this wood, if it was raining or snowing, the bark is going to get wet, but the inside will be dry. So what you're going to do is you're going to scrape off the bark, and then you're going to get shavings from the inside of the branch, okay? So, all right, so these blowdowns are the ideal tinder source if you're in a wooded area like me. So, you know, the best thing to do is, like I said, locate a conifer stand if you have one. All right, an area that'll give you overhead cover. Then you want to try to find a place that's going to reflect the heat back, all right? Like that uprooted tree there, all right? That uprooted tree is going to reflect the heat back to you. And if we're talking about SHTF, it's also going to provide some stealth so people don't see the fire, and it'll conceal a little bit. But so what you want to do is you want to look for a blown down tree like this. All right, this is the ideal scenario because this is actually a blown down hemlock, okay? Any kind of hemlock, pine, any kind of coniferous tree is going to have resins inside of it. So what that means is that if the tree is dried out, like you see this tree must have fell over a long time ago, okay? There's no green branches on it at all, so that tells me this thing's been down for at least a year, maybe 2, okay? So all this is going to be bone dry. It's up in the air, all right? So the air is going to keep the branches very, very dry, okay? So no matter if it rains or snows, it's always getting airflow, and as a result, the branches are going to be dry, okay? So this is what you want to look for, okay? Ideally, a conifer tree like this is the best source because, like I said, it has resins inside of it, and those resins are very flammable, and they'll take a spark from your ferrocerium rod or your lighter very, very easily, all right? Hardwoods are good also, all right? Hardwood is good, but conifers are even better, all right? As long as they're dry, they have to be bone dry, okay? Like this one right here is bone dry. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna gather our wood first before we start to do the shavings and shave down the tinder, okay, and get tinder to hit with a spark, okay? We're gonna gather wood, and if you guys remember, there's 3 types of fuel that you need for your fire. You need tinder, you need kindling, and you need fuel wood, all right? The tinder is what's gonna take the spark and get the fire going, and that's a very fine material that's gonna take a spark and burn right away, like a cotton ball, like wood shavings, sawdust, things like that, a little hot spark will catch them on fire, all right? Then you're gonna have kindling, and kindling is smaller stuff that it's not going to take a spark, but what it's going to do is it's going to catch on fire easily, and then from there you can build the fire up with the kindling, all right? And so an example of kindling would be small sticks, all right, like these sticks right here. Let me show you guys some of these sticks, all right, like this little stick here, all right? This thing will burn very easily because it's very thin and small. So you want to gather your kindling. You want to gather enough kindling just in case, you know, your fire goes out. You may have to restart the fire, and, you know, you want to gather a lot of kindling. All right, kindling is probably more important than anything else because the kindling is what transitions your fire from, you know, just getting it started to getting it nice and comfortable. All right, so kindling, and then we're going to look for fuel. Okay, fuel is larger wood that's going to help sustain the fire and burn it hot enough so we don't have to continuously add wood every 5 seconds, okay? So, you know, fuel is going to be large sticks and large branches like this one right here, okay? This is a nice thick branch here. This is going to be good fuel, okay? Here's some other examples. If you look at this tree here, you can see all these branches here, okay? All right, these big branches here, all right, I can crack this right off. All right, you see that? This is going to be a good fuel wood right here. I'm going to break this up, and this will keep the fire going and have it burning hot. Okay, so we're going to get our tinder, which I mentioned is a finger-sized stick like this that's dry, and we're going to scrape shavings off of that, and then We're going to grab our kindling, which is going to be small branches that are going to burn easily, and then we're going to look for fuel, which is going to be our bigger branches like this, okay? So stand by and I'll show you guys what I got. Alright guys, so here we got our fuel wood. This is perfect, okay? And what I can do is I can break this branch off, and this branch will feed this will give me everything I need. I got little branches here that I can use for kindling. And then I have some other branches here that I could use for my wood shavings. Alright, so I'm going to break this one down. And this one branch here will provide almost everything I need. Alright, so let's do this. Alright guys, so we're going to break some kindling off now. Alright, we got this nice kindling. We're going to get a bunch of kindling here. Alright, these nice little sticks. We're going to grab all of them. You got to work quick because the sun is going down. But you don't want to work too quick and get yourself injured. Okay, so remember, safety first. Pay attention to what you're doing. And pay attention to people around you. Okay. All right. All right, guys. So we got a bunch of kindling right here. This is going to help us build up the fire so we can put larger fuel. All right. Alright, we got some fuel. We got some larger fuel wood here. This we could use to keep the fire hot. This is our fuel wood. What we're also going to do with this is we're going to break it up, and we're going to use this as a way to start the fire, because the ground is wet and we don't want to start the fire on a wet ground. So we're going to break this stick up, and we're going to make like a platform so we can have a dry platform to build our fire on. Okay, so stick around. Alright guys, so we got to select the stick now to make our wood shavings to take a spark and get the fire going. So we need a nice dry, like I said, finger-sized stick. Okay, so here we have these sticks here. These are perfect candidates. Alright, and the way to tell if it's a good candidate is to break the stick. And when you break the stick, it'll make a nice cracking sound, like I said. And then when you break the stick, if you look inside, what you want to do is you want to touch the wood with your finger and make sure it's bone dry. Alright, like if you look at this wood here, it's bone dry. I'm touching it and I feel that it's bone dry. Okay, there's no moisture here. There is moisture on the outside, alright, because it did snow last night, so you know, the bark absorbed a little bit of moisture, but that's okay because we're going to peel the bark off, we're going to scrape the bark off, and we're going to get to the inside of the stick, and we're going to shave off some shavings, and that's what we're going to strike with our ferro rod, and that's where we're going to get the fire going. Okay, so the critical thing is a dry stick, about the size of your finger, and you want a good length on it so you can easily carve pieces of wood off of it and shavings. All right. So stand by and we're going to get started on that. Scrape the outside of the stick off, the bark here, so we can get to the inside of the wood. All right, because that's where the dry wood is. You see how dry that is? So we want to scrape the bark off, scrape the outer part of the wood off to expose the inside, which is going to be dry. Okay, and you want to scrape off a good amount here. Okay, scrape all that bark off, get the wood down to bare wood. All right, and having a sharp knife is going to really be an asset here, so that's why you want to always keep your knives sharp. Okay, because having a sharp knife will make your life a lot easier. Okay, look at how quickly I'm doing this. All right, so we're getting the outer wood off, we're cleaning it off, almost like we're skinning the stick in a sense. We're skinning it. We're taking the outer wood off to get to the center, which is going to be bone dry. and easy to light, okay? So just gonna shave this off here. Always want to be very careful when you're working with a knife in the woods, because if you cut yourself out here and you're far away from civilization, that could be a problem. You can get an infection. You know, you could bleed out and die even, depending on where you cut yourself. So you always want to be very heavily focused on what you're doing when you're working with a knife, when you're doing these shavings, okay? Be absolutely extremely careful, okay? You cut your leg open or you cut your finger open, that could be a problem. So take your time. Again, that's why you always want to allow yourself enough time. All right, you don't want to trying to start a fire when it starts getting dark. Like right now, you can see it's getting dark. I'm a little bit too late, but you know, that's just the timing today. I was had a late start, you know, and you always want to start early on your fires, okay? You don't want to wait to the last minute, all right? So this way you're not in a rush, okay? All right, so as you guys can see, we have the stick here. We shaved off all the bark. It's nice and dry. All right, as you can see, it's bone dry. And now we're gonna make some shavings out of this, all right? And with the shavings, they're gonna be very fine. They're gonna be like sawdust. And the way we're gonna do that is we're gonna take our knife and we're gonna hold the knife 90 degrees, okay? Just like so. We're gonna run the knife 90 degrees, and you see all the wood coming off when I do that? We're gonna run it 90 degrees perpendicular, and we're gonna get very fine dust and shavings, okay? So stand by and I'll show you how that works. All right guys, we got our fire lay here. We laid down all these sticks, and now we're gonna get those fine shavings. All right, so like I said, you wanna hold it 90 degrees. Your knife is gonna be perpendicular to the stick, and you're gonna shave off some fine shavings, okay? And that's where you're gonna strike with your ferro rod, all right? So I'm actually gonna use, what I actually did was I split this branch in half, and it's nice and flat. So I'm gonna get all the shavings are gonna go on this flat part right here, okay? And it doesn't take much effort. As you see, I'm not, you know, it's a very sharp knife, so I'm getting a nice, you know, pile of shavings going here, okay? And this is the most essential step, okay? This is absolutely critical, all right? You want to make sure you get enough tinder, all right? You want to get a good pile, because once you spark it, you want to make sure there's enough tinder to get it hot enough to ignite the kindling. And you want to have your kindling ready before you spark it, okay? Because when it sparks, the tinder is going to burn out very quickly. It's going to burn in a matter of seconds, okay? So you want to have that kindling ready, make sure it's dry, and have it ready to use right away, because this tinder is going to burn out very quickly, okay? So, all right, so just like I said, hold the knife 90 degrees. You can see I have a very sharp knife, and it's making quick work of this stick here. I'm not really expending much energy here. And that's why you want to keep your knives sharp, all right? The sharper your knife is, the safer it's going to be. A lot of people think that if you have a sharp knife, it's more dangerous, but it's actually safer to have a sharper knife, because you don't have to work as hard, all right? When you start to put pressure on the knife to try to cut something, that's when accidents happen, because your hand slips or the knife slips and you cut into yourself. So a sharp knife is actually safer than a dull knife, okay? So keep your knives razor sharp, because when you actually have to use them in a real situation, you're gonna be thankful that you kept it sharp, okay? Guys, so we got our tinder ready. It's ready to take a spark. We got a nice bundle of tinder. Now what we have here is very dry sticks here, and this is going to be our kindling. So once the tinder starts to burn, we're going to get these dry sticks and put them on. All right, starting with 1 or 2 sticks at a time. You don't want to put too much because you're going to smother it. But if you can't find dry sticks, what you can do is you can take your stick here, the one that you use to get the tinder, and you can scrape shavings off. All right, very fine shavings. Okay, you can see. And this time I'm going to hold the knife at an angle, and I'm going to get some nice flat shavings off of this thing. You always want to clear the bark off of it first to expose the bare wood, the dry wood under the bark. And you're just going to carve a bunch of shavings. You see I have a pile of these shavings here, and these shavings are bone dry. So if you can't find dry kindling, you could always use shavings as kindling. All right, so we're going to strike the tinder with our ferro rod, and then we're going to put the kindling on top and get this fire going. So stand by. Okay, all right guys, so we're ready to strike the tinder. We got our kindling right next to the tinder source. So as soon as this tinder starts to burn, it's going to burn quick. So we got to have dry kindling ready to put on top. But we already have our kindling set up here. You see this pile of sticks here? We got this big pile of sticks. This is our kindling. All right, so as this thing grows, we're going to feed it more sticks, okay? And then we have some more fuel wood. You see that big branch there? Once the fire gets bigger, we can throw that on, okay? So you want to have everything prepped and ready to go, especially your kindling. All right, your kindling is going to be critical, and you want to have some fuel on hand as well. All right, so we're going to strike this now and get this thing going. I got my ferrocerium rod, and we're going to get this thing going. You got to remember to act quickly, okay? Alright guys, so the fire's burning now. We're going to put our kindling on top. Very gently put your kindling on the top here. You don't want it to burn out. All right, sometimes you gotta blow on it, keep the flame going. Okay. We got ourselves a fire, guys. The beginning of the fire is the most critical. Okay, sometimes you have to blow on it, and sometimes if the wood is wet, you gotta, blowing on it will help if the wood is wet. Fire needs oxygen. Remember the fire triangle, like I talked about. And it was raining the last 2 days, so the wood here is wet, and we have rain and snow. Okay, so. But this is why you got to have your kindling prepared. So this way, as the fire is growing, you can add to it quickly. All right, that's why it's critical to have enough kindling. All right, guys, we got ourselves a fire now. so the fire's burning slowly. It's a little bit wet. This is the period of time where you really got to baby the fire until it gets hot. And once it gets hot, you can just start throwing wood on there. But in the beginning, you really got to baby it. Watch out, babe. Alright guys, the fire's going. It's dark now. You know, we got some sticks here and we're just going to keep feeding it until the fire gets bigger. And once the fire gets big enough, we're going to put some larger sticks on there, like this one right here. We're going to put some bigger sticks on there and that'll maintain the fire. We got some medium-sized sticks that we're going to put onto the fire now. We're going to slowly grow the fire. Alright, that's what you want to do. You want to just slowly grow the fire. You slowly increase the size of the sticks that you add. Alright, you don't want to just go right to the big sticks. Alright, you want to slowly build up the size of the fire. Alright, bigger and bigger, increasing the thickness and the size of the sticks, okay? And what you do is you put it in a teepee shape. I like to do a teepee because what the teepee does is it protects the core of the fire. Alright, because you're piling wood on top. And so you just pile the wood in a teepee-like fashion, as you see me doing here. I'm piling the wood in a teepee style, alright? And this way you protect the core of the fire. If there's any precipitation, the teepee will protect the center of the fire, which is, you know, where the hot coals are, and that's what keeps everything going. Alright? So that's what you do. So we're doing good here. We're slowly feeding this thing, getting it bigger. And then as it gets bigger, we'll put this big log on here, and that'll keep the fire going for a while. So, alright guys, so the fire's burning nice and hot now, okay? Now we want to add some larger wood, alright? I got these big branches here. You see these big branches? The way you can tell if they're dry is if you bang on them. Alright, if you hear like a popping noise, that tells you that it's dry. All right, if it's like a thud, that means it's wet. All right, but what we're gonna do is we don't necessarily have to, you know, break this and, you know, with our manual labor. All right, if you're in a situation where you don't have like a saw, all right, a lot of guys get carried away with you know, their hand saws and trying to saw big pieces of wood in half. And that's a great thing, but what you can do is you can just burn these in half, okay? If you needed to break this big log up and you didn't have a handsaw and you didn't want to dull your knife blade, you can take this log and just put it on the fire and burn the log in half, okay? That'll save you a lot of calories and a lot of energy rather than sitting here trying to chop through it or saw through it. You know, just take this whole thing, put it on the fire, and let the fire just burn it in half slowly, you know. And in the meantime, you can find smaller pieces like this that you can easily break and just continuously feed the fire. So we're going to put some of the larger sticks on now, and we're going to put this big log on now. You can see it's burning very good. All right, so the fire is a success, and this is how you get a fire going in the woods, guys. Alright guys, so we got the fire going here, and so this is how you start a fire in the wilderness. Again, you don't want to rely on natural tinder materials, because if the tinder is wet, you know, even the method that I showed you is never a guarantee. So you always want to carry something with you, okay? Like in part 2, I talk about tinder materials and fire starters and things like that, all right? You always want to have tinder with you. But the fire's going good. We're in the middle of nowhere now. As you can see, temperature's dropping, so you can see my vapor here, okay? We're in the middle of nowhere, but we're gonna head out soon. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and in part 4 I'm going to talk about how to make a stealthy fire. All right, but what you want to do is, this fire is a little bit big, but if it's a SHTF, you want to keep that fire small, just enough to do what you need to do to boil water or whatever. But you'll get some good heat out of, even a small fire can produce a good amount of heat. All right, so that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. Take care. God bless. And don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere.